Namaskar. Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. Today I have with me Francois Gautier. You have seen him before on our channel. He was talking about his latest book, and we will touch upon that in this conversation also. But more importantly, Francois Gautier came to India almost by accident. You can get that part from our previous conversations, and he decided to stay on, and he continues to stay in India. He is a Frenchman. He was born in France. He goes back home once in a while, and he's going to share with us his recollections of covering Kashmir as a journalist in the late 80s and early 90s. Francois, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel.
Namaskar.
So Francois, you had explained how you had got on a car journey expedition sort of and came to India many years ago. That part I remember. And I don't know where you want to start this particular talk. I leave it to you, sir. You were a journalist in a previous life. Now you have a wonderful museum in Pune, and you've also been a very accomplished author. We'll talk about later. But I would like you to share with our viewers your thoughts on what you found when you went to Kashmir.
India, for a Western journalist, is a very complicated country. It's a very diverse, very paradoxical, and we Westerners, of course, are very ignorant about India. I myself came to India at the age of 19. I was lucky because I was young, so my mind was still open, but I had very few ideas about India. I didn't know. I knew about Maharajas. I'd read Tintin. I knew about fakirs, but I had no clue. And then when you arrive in India, especially if you're in Delhi, in that very small world of the diplomatic corps, the Western journalists, their Indian journalist friends, the same ideas are going around and still going around today about Hindu fundamentalism, and all the religions are the same, and Hindus are also fanatic. So I had these ideas. I thought the RSS was a very dangerous outfit, and it's only when I met the RSS chief that I realized that they were pretty harmless people. Kashmir opened my eyes. I came to Kashmir ignorant. I had gone to Kashmir as a tourist. And of course, Kashmir is a beautiful place. The Dal Lake, we stand on a houseboat, and the mountains, Gulmarg. And you don't see things. The Muslims come in the boat and sell you carpets and shawls. And you don't understand. Even as a journalist, you don't see, you don't perceive. But when I started covering Kashmir as a journalist, and I saw Today, it pains me today to see that the Kashmiri Muslims are portraying themselves as victims, and the Western media and the Western governments are just gobbling it up. Because I saw the beginning, I saw that the Kashmiri Muslims started a war against India without any provocation and chased out people whom they were their neighbors, and who had made no other mistake than being from a different religion. They didn't the Hindus of Kashmir, what people call the Kashmiri Pandit, but I prefer the Kashmiri Hindus because it says what it means. The Kashmiri Hindus, like all Hindus, are pretty tolerant people. They would go to the Muslim festival, they would share, they would go to their marriages, and suddenly, when Benazir Bhutto did a famous speech of Azad Kashmir, in a few days, in a few weeks, in a few months, all the mosques in Kashmir and Srinagar and in other parts of Kashmir told the Hindus, convert or die, and they fled. So this opened my I lost my innocence in Kashmir. Luckily, I lost my innocence because then I looked at India differently. I understood that not all religions are same, that the Hindus are capable of, as I said, going to the Kashmiri Muslims festivals, but other religions like Christianity and particularly Islam still think that they're the only true religion, and it is their duty to convert by force, by violence. if necessary, others. And so Kashmir really opened my eyes. And unfortunately, I must say that I was a lone, I was a lone voice in Kashmir. At that time, I'm talking about between 89 and 2000, 2099 being the first free elections in Kashmir. Uh, the entire Western journalist corps, which was very, very, at that time, every major newspaper in the world had a correspondent in Delhi. It's not true today because today they have stringers or they have closed their bureaus. But at that time, every major newspaper in the world, in the West, had a correspondent in Delhi. So, and we were close because there was not so much internet. There were no mobile phones yet. It came in '93, actually, the mobile phone. So we used to meet in the Foreign Correspondents Club of Delhi. So we all knew each other. So we all came to Srinagar. It was like a pilgrimage. And from 90 onwards, Kashmir was under curfew. Most of the important cities of Kashmir were under curfew. So you needed passes, and so we all knew each other, and we all stayed in the same hotels. There were two hotels open, and ultimately there was only one hotel open in Srinagar. It was called Adu's. So the entire corps of Western correspondents and some of the major, Indian journalists from the Hindustan Times, Indian Express, uh, Times of India, etc., were there in the same hotel. So we knew each other, we talked to each other. But unfortunately, as I said, I was a lone voice. I was a lone voice to because at that time all the Western journalists believed that it was not true that Pakistan was training, arming, and financing the Kashmir separatists who would come into Pakistan, Kashmir, be trained, be armed, and then sent back with money into India. Oh, everybody would say no, but that's not true, and it was not even the BJP government; it was the Congress government at that time. So I felt it made sense. I felt that there was no other way that these guys would come back, well equipped and well indoctrinated, and started killing. I saw the killing of the Hindu leaders of that time. There were the director of Doordarshan. There was a famous doctor, surgeon called Dr. Tiku. All people that I had interviewed who were killed one by one by the separatists who came back from. So I wrote it in my articles, and I even wrote it in. I used to write in those days for Indian Express and Hindustan Times, and there was a newspaper in Bombay called Blitz by a gentleman called Mr. Karanja, and at some point he accepted that fact that Kashmir was a boiling point. So Kashmir really opened my eyes. I lost my innocence, Kashmir, and again, luckily, because I saw things as they were. Most journalists think look at things as they want them to be. We see today uh, the coverage of the Ukraine war, the Russia-Ukraine war. It's a very one-sided coverage. Whatever the rights and wrongs that are there. So the same thing was true of Kashmir. It was a very one-sided coverage. Uh, the compassion was for the Kashmiri Muslims as it is today. The compassion was the Kashmiri Muslims have been repressed and they are striking back. But I saw that Kashmir was about a religion, Islam, that thought that for a long time, because after all, Kashmir was the seat of Shivaism. It was a place of worship for all Hindus for centuries, for millenniums. But it was savagely conquered by Islam, and there were different pogroms during the century. If you look at the history of Kashmir, it's a very bloody history. Most of the Kashmiri Muslims today are just converted Hindus who have espoused, who have embraced the intolerance and violence of Islam. But most of them are converted Hindus who must have suffered terribly. So I saw that in Kashmir. I saw it elsewhere afterward, but in Kashmir, I saw that one religion, Islam, would just kill you if you belong to a different religion. And this really was something that today the world is not ready to accept, but I saw with my own eyes. I mean, most people live secondhand. They read the newspaper and they express opinions which are not their own. But I had different opinion. Then I came to Kashmir. I saw what happened. I saw the exodus of 350,000 innocent Hindus. I mean, they had committed no crime, no mistake, except they didn't belong to Islam. They belonged to a different religion. And I saw what happened to them, and it opened my eyes, and I started writing about it. Of course, today it's still not politically correct to say so. I have been, you know, I have been slandered. I have been attacked, both in India and in my country, in France, for being an anti-Muslim. But I just wrote what I saw. I saw that one religion was capable of killing other people because they didn't belong to the same religion. And however non-politically correct it is the truth. We journalists should stand by truth. And this is what I saw with my own eyes. So this is what I reported. And today, we're in 2022. That's a long time after I covered Kashmir. It's 22 years after I haven't gone back to Kashmir since then. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. I mean, of course, I have been vindicated in the sense that today every journalist accepts the fact that these people are trained in Pakistan, and Pakistan has been waging a proxy war onto India, both in Punjab, in the same, a little before that, and then in Kashmir later. So it is accepted today. But in those days, it was not accepted. You have to understand that. There was one voice which ruled everything. It was the voice of Mark Tully. Now, Mark Tully was at that time the BBC. One cannot understand today, but there was not so much television yet, and the BBC radio was the queen of everything. And Mark Tully was the king of all journalists. His voice was, of course, he had covered Blue Star, and he got, he garnered his. That's another story. I mean, that I would like to talk about one day. Khalistan and Blue Star. Of course, he had covered Blue Star, and he had been put in jail, or he had escaped, and he came back to India. He was a hero. But in Kashmir, his voice made the rule that he said clearly that the Indian government is lying. There is no Pakistan hand here. And every journalist, except me, I don't know of any other journalist, repeated the same thing, that the Indian government is lying. There is no Pakistan hand. It's just spontaneous, revolts, and Kashmiri Muslims deserve our pity and our compassion. And I thought otherwise. I visited the last Hindu temple at that time in Srinagar, which had been attacked by militants the day before. It was a temple dedicated to Ganesh, and I visited that temple. I dragged one of my friends who was the Spiegel correspondent. His name was 𝙒𝙧𝙤𝙬𝙤. He didn't want to come because at that same time there was a Kashmiri separatist called 𝙒𝙬𝙤𝙦 who had escaped from his house and was going to meet the press in the old Srinagar. But I was not interested. I wanted to see that temple. So I dragged my friend, and I met these pandits, and their courage, their dedication touched me. I was very, very touched. And I decided that I would do something about the Kashmiri Hindus. And I did. I started with the help of Mr. Advani and 𝙤𝙬𝙤𝙦 Ravishankar, an exhibition of the Kashmiri Hindus, which was open in Habitat Center in 2004. And later, we took that, thanks to 𝙤𝙬𝙤𝙦 Ravishankar, I took that exhibition all over the world. India first, in Delhi, in Bangalore, in Calcutta, in Bombay, and then took it around the world. We show it to all the people in the world, to the Israeli Parliament, to the American Congress, to the great show in the American Congress, actually, and to Scotland, England, everywhere. And then I put it in the museum, in my Pune museum, where it's still there. So not only my eyes were open in Kashmir, but I felt touched by the plight of Hindus, because Hindus are wonderful people, but at the same time, they don't know how to defend themselves anymore. So it also pains me, and I know that it makes some of my Hindu friends angry, that these 350,000 people, among them, they were young people, they were people in their 20s and 30s, we could have taken a gun. I mean, this is never said. This is never said, but 350,000 people is not a small number. So why was there no unarmed, at least even if it was suicidal, why was there not an armed revolt that, I have been living there for centuries. This is my land. This is my property. This is my fields. I'm going to stand for it with my life. This happened all over the world, but in Kashmir it didn't happen. They just fled. In a few weeks, few months, the entire Hindu community of the Valley of Kashmir, and people are very ignorant about Kashmir. In my country, in France, I try to educate people that Kashmir is a very it's complicated. No, the Valley of Kashmir, which is today a majority of Muslim, but which had in 1900, according to to the British census, it had 1 million Hindus still in the Valley of Kashmir. So okay, today it's majority 98, 99% Muslim, and then you have Ladakh, which has a majority of Buddhist devotees of the Dalai Lama, and then you have Jammu, which has a dwindling majority of Hindus. So Kashmir is a very, people think Kashmir is one thing, but Kashmir is a very complicated story, actually. It's a very complicated story. So I try to educate the French because there is a lot of ignorance in France. When Mr. Modi rightly abolished Article 370, which allows Kashmiri Muslims to settle anywhere in India. We see today that the souvenir market is mostly in the hands of Kashmiri Muslims. The carpets, the shawls, the papier-mâché, all these things. You find it all over India till Pondicherry. In Pondicherry, even in Auroville, it is Muslims, Kashmiri Muslims who hold they sell souvenirs and Ganeshas and Shivas and all these things, along with some ganja. But it didn't allow Hindus or Indians to invest in Kashmir, to buy land in Kashmir, to build housing. So it was totally unfair. So I think Mr. Modi did something right, but the way it was perceived in the West was catastrophic. It was perceived as a persecution of the Muslims. And I tried to explain, I tried in my books, in my articles, but it's a lost battle. I have been fighting that battle for 30 years, but it's a lost battle because the Muslims are better at PR than the Hindus, and their PR is much better. Even today, we see that they portray themselves as victims, where they're the aggressors. But why can't the Hindus? Why can't Mr. Modi and his government, have hired a good Western agency and do some PR to counteract this? That actually we were peaceful in Kashmir. They started killing people without any provocation. They attacked the army, they attacked the BSF, they attacked the Hindus. These are facts. These are not just a story. These are facts. But I don't understand why the Indian government cannot do that. They are guilty of letting a bad image of India spread its poisonous tentacles all over the world, from America to France to England. Everybody thinks that Kashmiri Muslims are persecuted, that Mr. Modi particularly and the BJP particularly are doing a pogrom on the Muslims. I see it in the BBC. I read the BBC because it's still a very good television and radio, but the coverage of Kashmir up to the day before, I read some article again about Kashmir. It's slander, it's just lies, and so why can't this government strike back? The Chinese wouldn't let it happen. The Chinese would let it happen. They would just strike back economically, and but it pains me because I was very touched. Yeah, tell me.
Okay. Thank you so much for the intro. We're going to take a quick look at some of the things that you mentioned. I have a few questions. The first question I have is, when did it first occur to you that whatever was happening in Kashmir was induced from Pakistan? Year?
See, it's a very good question and very difficult to answer because a good journalist works also on intuition. It is not only reasoning and seeing and deducting. It's also, feeling an atmosphere, having inklings. What is called intuition is that intuition is a higher form of reasoning. Is that sometimes you come to a place or you meet someone and you have an intuition about that person. If you those who do a lot of interviews, they know that you prepare your questions according to what you know, what you think you know, and when you meet the person, an answer to a question gives you an inkling, an intuition, and then you go into a different line and you start pursuing that line. So in Kashmir, I had once an experience in Kashmir, and again, it is not. It's not in the logical realm. As I said, there was always curfews in Kashmir, especially in Srinagar, and every night you could hear gunfires and grenades, and there were fights everywhere. Once I had to come back I had interviewed some professor, and I had to come back in curfew with a police jeep, but with all lights off. I think it was the most dangerous time of my life, because Kashmir was a very dangerous place at that way. Anyway, so there was always curfews even at night, in the daytime also, and we were all staying in that hotel called 𝙒𝙧𝙤𝙤. Now 𝙒𝙧𝙤𝙤 is on the band. It's a band that has been built to contain the floods of the 𝙤𝙧𝙤𝙤 River. The river that crosses Srinagar is called the 𝙤𝙧𝙤𝙤 River. So there's a band, very famous band, and so 𝙒𝙧𝙤𝙤 was on the band. So in spite of the curfew, one could walk a little bit on that band, and I like to walk at night before sleeping and after dinner. So I was walking on that band, and there was that gunfire and there's grenades and all this strife happening in Srinagar. It was the worst time of the, and I felt, again, it's a very intuitive and irrational experience. I felt that this place, Kashmir, was sacred because so many saints and so many yogis and so many sadhus have come for thousands of years to meditate there, to do tapasaya, to do pujas, to even the recent ones, Vivekananda, Swami Vivekananda, Sri Aurobindo, they all came to Kashmir and they all had powerful experience. Sri Aurobindo had a very powerful experience in Kashmir of the immanent experience. So I had not that, but I had experience that there was something sacred in that land, and even with all that grenade and this gunfire and this strife and this killing, there was still something coming out of this earth, of that earth which is in Kashmir, which was sacred. So I felt that time that Kashmir was worth keeping. Of course, Kashmir is very important from a strategic point of view. Already, India is dominated by Tibet, which Chinese very cleverly, overtook, and it's a great strategic disadvantage. But if Kashmir was taken, India is doomed. So anyway, I felt that Kashmir was worth preserving for India because of that sacredness. So again, that was an intuition. It was not something that I had reasoned in my mind. I just felt this experience. So in the same way, when I arrived in Srinagar after some time, not immediately, I felt that this was something very important, very essential, that the Indian government, both the Congress at that time, because after all the Congress let it happen. He let Indians, their own people, become refugees in their own country. The Kashmiri Hindus. After that, my wife and I, we visited few camps. There were camps in Delhi in those days. There were camps in Jammu, of course. We visited camps. So these Indians had become refugees in their own country, which is something, absolutely, I think, unique in the world. I don't think it happened very often. So I just wrote about it on and on and on again, but I was a very lone voice, and I felt that the Indian government didn't care. Everything is about votes in India, because India is a democracy, but Indians went overboard. I mean, there is elections at every corner. We see today that even Mr. Modi, every 3-4 months there's an election. So instead of governing, the entire attention is on getting the money and having campaigning and winning these elections. Because even if you're good, and I think Mr. Modi is a good person, and so is the BJP, unless you win elections, you cannot put that goodness into service of the nation. So too many elections, too much democracy. But at that time in Srinagar, and I didn't go only to Srinagar, I went to the line of control twice, both on the Indian side and the Pakistani side. I went with the army in operations. I went with the militants several times. So I covered extensively Kashmir, and the aftertaste is not. This is not a place I would go back. People rave about Kashmir, but I mean, I wouldn't go back there because what happened there is dirty. It's shameful, and no government should tolerate that. I mean, we see that the British go and fight in the Falklands, something which is 12,000 kilometers away from their country because they deem that it belongs to them. We see that France, holds Corsica, which is an island, and it had a Italian history and before being French, but they feel that it's very French, and they will hold it by force if necessary. But in India, Kashmiris don't go. The Kashmiri Hindus, they're not a big vote. They are hardly, I don't know, 500,000, 600,000. It's a drop in the Indian vote bank. So nobody really bothers about them. I think Mr. Advani was the last one who really cared about the Kashmiri Hindus, and he actually helped me to mount that exhibition on the Kashmiri Hindus in Habitat Center, and he helped me to get the material for it. So 𝙒𝙖𝙩𝙨𝘼𝙥𝙥 cared, but today I don't think anybody really cares. And what's important is to change the narrative. The Indian government, before it tries to resettle the Kashmiri Hindus, which is an impossibility now, it should try to change the narrative to show history of Kashmir as it happened. The recent history, from 89 till today. This is something that the Indian government, Mr. Modi, can do. Mr. Modi can do a campaign and do exhibitions, and send people abroad and show them the photos, show them the facts, show them the statistics. It's not very difficult. It's possible, but the will is not there. The will is not there, and this saddens me.
Thank you, Francois. See, I can tell you a couple of things. I have been to Kashmir a few times, 74 and 80. And in 74, what I saw was a more friendly Kashmir than in 1980. Because in 1980, I was at the height of winter. It's very cold. In Srinagar, it can be really, really cold in winter. And one thing that kind of took me by surprise was people kept saying, "You are from India." And I used to, like, third time, fourth time, I just said, "What the heck are you talking about? This is still India." And then 3 or 4 people ganged up, and my friends were with me, and they just, pulled me back. Because, there were 3 of us Hindus, and this was actually the bus stand, Srinagar bus stand. That's where the confrontation happened. And we were just about to take a bus back to Jammu, but it just felt a little odd that in 1980 itself, I could feel these tremors, Francois, you said you took a trip and you addressed the United States Congress with your museum. When did that happen? Because I think another trip is high time now, because our congressmen, especially the Democratic ilk, have passed a bill called the Islamophobia bill, which is exactly what you were saying in this conversation, that they suddenly want to play victims. And this is all being piloted by one Muslim, Ilhan Omar. She's the daughter of a colonel from Somalia, managed to somehow paint herself as a refugee, gets herself a citizenship in the United States, and allegedly marries her own brother so that the brother can come into US as an immigrant. And the FBI won't act on this. Immigration fraud is for life in the United States, and they still won't act on it. And anyway, this is a saga for a different day. Go ahead.
Very interesting. I want to come back to that because one of my eye-opening experience in Kashmir was that I had a friend. His name was General Tiwari. He was an army brigadier general who fought the Bangladesh war, and of course he had been posted in Kashmir as most of the army people are at some point. And he told me, there's a very nice professor of don't remember, of literature in Srinagar, a Muslim gentleman. Go and meet him. He was a good friend, and so I went to meet that professor in Srinagar. and because I'm a white man, everybody says, every Kashmiri Muslim in those days, I don't know now, think that, white men will be sympathetic to the cause. So that Kashmiri guy was very nice. I mean, he was a refined professor, spoke very good English, and he offered me tea, and he was very courteous. But in those days, they were showing a serial on television. I think it was Ramayana. I think it was Ramayana in those days on Doordarshan. Also, suddenly he burst out, why are we forced to watch a serial, and this is rubbish, and we don't want this, and we're not interested. So I was shocked to see that this very courteous, very polished, very English-speaking gentleman would come out with so much hatred against the Ramayana, which after all is a pretty harmless epic. And then on the way back, because in those days there was only Indian airline, of course. So the flight would often stop in Jammu. It would do Srinagar, Jammu, Delhi. So, and we would stay in the plane. So next to me was a Muslim lady, also from a high, from upper class, and she was taking her daughter to study in a convent in Jammu. So we started talking, and she saw I was a journalist, so she thought I was sympathetic. So I asked her, why are you so much against India? And she said, we feel more comfortable with Islam. And she said it nicely. She didn't say it with hatred. She said it nicely. We feel more at ease, comfortable with Islam, and Pakistan is our natural destination. This is where we would like to go. So it's not a question of the guy who slit your throat, the militants. It's also that the normal, what I discovered, in spite of what every Indian government has said, and including its present government, is that if you pour billions of subsidies, and give work to all the Kashmiri Muslims, that they will love India. No, that's absolutely not true. It's an illusion. Every Kashmiri Muslim, my experience, from the shikara boat driver, that drives you on the Lake Dal, to the retired High Court judge, they don't feel Indian. They think, no, I'm not Indian. As you said, I'm not Indian. I don't belong. They won't say openly I belong to Pakistan, but their heart is with Pakistan. So it's a difficult battle for India, but unless you fight the battle, then okay. Now come to the American Congress. So in 2011, that same exhibition which had opened in the Habitat Center and showed around the world, 𝙒𝙖𝙩𝙨𝘼𝙥𝙥 Ravi Shankar helped to sponsor so that we could show it to the American Congress. The American Congress is not like India. If you pay, the congressman will come. It's not corruption. You pay him, he'll come, and you have a photo op. So, but there happened to be two congressmen who were friendly to India in those days. One was called Palod. I forgot his full name. He was an American congressman, very friendly to India, and the other one was called, I think, Jones. So we didn't have to pay these people. They came to inaugurate. Of course, it cost a lot of money because we had to hire one of the Congress exhibition hall, which is called Cannon Hall, in Washington. And you have to pay a lot of money, which 𝙒𝙖𝙯 did. I didn't have that kind of money. So they came, these people, and they helped pass a resolution in the US Congress on the plight of the Kashmiri Hindus. Just a resolution. There was no political implication, but that, taking notice that they have been persecuted. So, but that was a one-man effort, of course, backed by the might of 𝙒𝙗 Ravi Shankar's art of living. But the Indian government can do it again. Mr. Modi has the power, he has the money, he has the vision to do that. He needs to counteract the narrative which is happening in the West, from France to US, everywhere, which is pro-Islam and showing Islam as a persecuted minority in India, and Hindus are dangerous people. We need to counter that narrative because it's absolutely untrue. If you stand by truth, and what I have learned in India is that truth is most important. Truth. If we stand by truth, we need to fight for truth. And I see that, Hindus are not capable of that. I'm in that museum now in Pune, and we're going to inaugurate a day after exhibitions on women warriors, Tarabai and 𝙒𝙧𝙤𝙪𝙥𝙥 and 𝙤𝙧𝙤𝙪, but they are not in Indian history books. They're not in the curriculums. I mean, I'm a non-Hindu, non-Indian Frenchman in love with this country, so I'm doing my bit, but it's a drop unless the Indian government does it and imposes it. How will it happen? The more you wait, the more difficult it is. The more we wait, and the more there will be obstacles to overcome. So and I'm willing to take that exhibition again to the US, but at that time I had the 𝙒𝙗𝙖𝙩𝙤𝙦. It was easier. There was less problem with Islam. There was less things against Islamophobia. So it was easier at that time, but I'm willing to do it. But I think the Indian government is the one that should do it.
So I have to explain why this is happening, why I'm muting myself. We have this habit. One person, my neighbor, turns on the lawnmower, then everybody starts remembering, oh, I need to mow the lawn. I need to mow the lawn. So like 3 people were mowing the lawn. So I had to go into silent mode. Luckily, you were speaking well, so I could keep myself muted, which is why I'm muting. So thanks for understanding. So the thing I wanted to ask you was, the last time we talked, you mentioned that you had met the then Chief Minister, Devendra Fadnavis, about your museum. And he said that he was going to give a donation from the government. Has that been given?
No, that's opened my eyes also, that actually politicians in India don't have the power. It's the bureaucrats that have the power. So we met Mr. Fadnavis, myself and my wife, showed him the exhibition, including the Kashmiri Pandit exhibition. He was very impressed, and I think he's a fairly nice gentleman. So he said, I'm going to give you 1 crore from the Chief Minister's fund. Done, finished. Oh, okay, we're very happy. My wife and I went back. I'm very happy. 1 crore. I mean, we don't get 1 crore. We get some 5,000, 10,000, 5 lakhs sometimes maximum. So we don't get this kind of money. So I wanted to start the big museum, a big state-of-the-art air-conditioned museum. So I need that kind of money. So then we were called by the bureaucrats, and the bureaucrats said, "Oh, but you have this paper. You have this paper. Oh, you have no artifacts in your museum. It's not a museum." They scrapped it. And I told Mr. Fadnavis, he was still in power. I said, "What happened to the 1 crore?" So actually, the chief minister, they are the one in front, but the bureaucrats, and I see that for Mr. Modi also, that Mr. Modi, the other day we were in Pondicherry, the Swachh Bharat, they had this big wheelbarrow where they pick up the trash, and they're all lying, upside down. There are hundreds of wheelbarrows lying upside down because the lower bureaucracy doesn't get any corruption out of this. Although it's an abandoned project. The Swachh Bharat, maybe in Delhi or maybe when Mr. Modi travels, it is revived, but it's gone. It's gone. So the same thing, and it happened also with Uddhav Thackeray. Now, Uddhav Thackeray came to the museum because the Dalai Lama had come to inaugurate a Tibetan Holocaust exhibition. Now, Dalai Lama is someone I'm very fond of. I think Tibet is very important for India. It is something that India should take much more interest into, because it is a gateway to an invasion from the Chinese. It happened in 1962. It can happen again. And the Tibetans were the peaceful buffer, non-nuclear, non-military peaceful buffer between China and India, and they're also the people who love India. Buddhism came from India. So anyway, the Dalai Lama came to the museum to inaugurate this exhibition, and Uddhav Thackeray, through his son, learned about it, and they wanted to have the darshan of the Dalai Lama. So of course we organized it. Uddhav came with his wife, with his son, and we thought they were very nice people, very quiet. And the Dalai Lama made his speech, and then Mr. Thackeray made his speech. He said, "Shivaji Maharaj, is our God. I will do anything for this museum. Anything you ask me, I will do anything." After that, I was never able to talk to him. I've sent letters, emails. Even 3 days ago, I sent him an email. Never able to get hold of that politician who promised to help the Shivaji Maharaj Museum. So anyway, this is life. We have to
Francois,
do with it.
Yeah, Francois, what I have seen is typically someone from the PMO is always watching my videos, because I usually try to portray the truth. There is no hidden agenda here. I'm not getting paid for doing this.
Let me say something about that. Just in 2 seconds, I interrupt you. Now, yeah. Mr. Modi came to Pune 10 days ago, I shouldn't say that, it's not politically correct, but doesn't matter. Mr. Modi came to Pune. He knows about the museum because he inaugurated our Shivaji Maharaj exhibition in Mumbai with Sri Ravi Shankar. And I met him after that when he was Chief Minister of Gujarat, and he was interested in the museum. So we knew that he was coming to Pune, so we invited him to the museum, knowing that with security and it's not always easy. So the PMO never answered. They never even bothered to answer us. But he wanted to celebrate the 50 years of 𝙒𝙤𝙤𝙤𝙤, which is a very famous school in Pune, which churned out the most westernized students that you can imagine. 𝙒𝙤𝙤𝙤𝙤 is, it may be a very high-level school, but it just give a Western, curriculum. And the people that come out, I know friends of, who have withdrawn their daughter because they were getting into drugs and, rave parties, and so they just took out their daughters. So, okay, Mr. Modi didn't come to a museum, fair enough, Shivaji Maharaj, and but that he went to that he went to symbolize. Who is advising him? Who's advising the man? I mean, because now, of course, in Delhi and far away, he's a bit disconnected from everything. So, but who's advising him? Tell him to go to symbolize for. I mean, I don't know. I'm just a simple Frenchman, and it unsettles me. I find it okay. That's the way it is. That's the way it is. Sorry about the interruption.
Francois, you hit the right word. It unsettles you. It does unsettle me also. I don't know how much you've followed my work, Francois. I've written 10 books now. First 4 or 5 are all about investigative journalism. I took aim at NDTV, which was one of the premium channels. And not a mouse that works there has gone to jail yet. Okay, and I've established black and white evidence, and government's own departments have found it. Just these guys escape jail somehow. But more importantly, viewers, I urge you to go to Francois' museum. I'm also guilty of not going there. I tried to go one time. I couldn't find the time. I'm again coming to India this time, and I'm going to try and definitely come this time.
12 minutes from the airport, and from the 𝙤𝙬𝙤𝙤 airport. My museum is in after 𝙤𝙬𝙤𝙤 village. The airport is named after a village called 𝙤𝙬𝙤𝙤. So the museum is just after the 𝙤𝙬𝙤𝙤. So it's about 12 minutes from the airport. There is a Google map on our website, factmuseum.com. It's free. It's a Seva project, so entrance is free, and everything is free there. So come, and we have 20 pavilions, and now we're inaugurating this wonderful women warriors that nobody knows about in India anymore. People know about Rani of Jhansi, who fought actually the wrong war. She fought to reinstate the Mughal throne. I mean, Indians are so ignorant about their own history. Rani of Jhansi was a wonderful person, but she fought to reinstate the Mughal throne, which is the wrong thing to do anyway. So people know about Rani of Jhansi, but they don't know about this wonderful Tarabai and Rani Kito Chennamma and so many others that we're going to do slowly. So please come and see that museum. It's a lot of work, a lot of hard work, a lot of hurdles, a lot of heartaches. We have problem with the land. We have Pune is catching up now, and apartments are coming all over. So the land which was worthless when I got it now is worth crores and crores of rupees. So people are after us to get that land. So we are facing a lot of problems, and this is why I wanted to meet Uddhav Thackeray to tell him, and Mr. Modi also, to tell him we need help, we need protection. This is a wonderful museum. I think it's the only museum of Indian history that shows history as it happened in India and in the world. But we are facing a lonely battle. So that's the way it is. That's the way it is.
No, things will change. Viewers, I need to tell you one thing. And I saw this in one of the interviews of Francois with somebody else, where he was explaining that, Aurangzeb was such a tyrant and he was such a bigot that he carefully, meticulously documented every outrage he perpetrated against Hindus. And Francois has captured most of that in his museum. You need to know your history. You need to get outraged, especially those of you sitting in Kashmir thinking that because you are Muslim that you don't have this heritage. Shame on you. Absolute shame on you. Come down to Pune, take a look at it. You will know, you will hang your head in shame. Anyway, sir, I'm sorry to go on a rant, but I need to tell our viewers that sometimes here is where the truth is, and you should go and find it. And let's talk a little bit about Tarabai. You mentioned that my interest has been piqued I was, again, see, whenever I have subject matter experts come, they tell me a few things and it piques my interest. Now you tell me a little bit about a teaser on Tarabai, because from what I have heard, she made Aurangzeb run until he died of running. I mean, he died in Ahmednagar, if I remember correctly. Tell us a little bit about what you have got of Tarabai.
Yeah. She became a queen by accident because she was a daughter-in-law of Shivaji Maharaj, and her husband died. Her husband was tortured for 15 days by Aurangzeb,
Yes.
and then they cut his body in pieces and fed it to the dogs. We have a painting on that. Very few people know about that, but this was an absolutely excruciating death. It's a horrible death. So anyway, she became a queen, and she fought the Mughals very courageously, and it was not always easy because she landed in prison, and so we show her life from the beginning till the end. She died quite old, actually, and she's an extraordinary person. I mean, in France we have Joan of Arc. We have one person, one lady who's extraordinary herself, no doubt. But in India there are hundreds of them. We have Aliabai Holkar, also not of royal blood, but became a queen by accident and was a wonderful queen, so just, and built many temples and dharamsala, a battalion of Indian women soldiers. Rani Kito Chennamma, who fought the British and died in jail. So there are so many extraordinary, inspiring Indian heroines. We should inspire, the youth of India, the girls of India, but they are not, because they're not taught. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to show that Indians should be proud of their history, because it's a wonderful history, in spite of all the Holocaust and all the suffering. On the whole, if you take the history, it's a wonderful history, and any nation would be proud to have such a ancient history. But it's not the case, because what happens in India, the education that Indian children get and students, has nothing Indian in it, no Indianness. So as a result, the biggest drain in the world, brain drain, is of India, of Hindus, because they just want to. We saw in Ukraine how many students were there in Ukraine, because there's no interest to. I want to be in India. I want to help my country. I'm a Westerner. I want to help. I want to build something. But if I'm an Indian and I want to run away either to Ukraine or to the US to study there and be lost forever, because I'll become a doctor in UK, most probably after my Ukraine study, I'll become a doctor in UK and my children will be born there and finished. I'm lost for India. So this is what I would like the chance to happen in India, is that Indian children be made proud of their history without blinkers, without being hidden all the massacres and all the Holocaust in Kashmir, particularly, that have happened, because there were Muslim kings in Kashmir who killed hundreds of thousands of Hindus or converted them. So this should be also taught. But on the whole, Indian history is glorious. There are glorious people from Shivaji Maharaj, Maharana Pratap. It's a glorious history, but it's not taught as it happened. So this needs to change, and unless Mr. Modi does it, I think the occasion will be lost, and it'll take another 100 years to find another Mr. Modi.
Yes, and can we put up the graphic, please? I want to show to our viewers the latest book of Francois. For some reason, it's not showing up. Just one second, Francois. We try to bring up the book.
No problem.
I think the software went into sleep mode, because it's coming up again. Just one second. There you go. An entirely new history of India. And Francois, you want to talk a little bit about this? This came out a few months ago. Go ahead.
This is my most complete book, because there are many distortions in Indian history. So, and it goes back very far. Like the Indian didn't master the iron, but then in the Qutub Minar in Delhi, you have an iron column which has never rusted, and which is at least 2,500 years old. That Indian didn't master the horses, and there have been discoveries that of horse skeleton which date to 2,500 years old. So then you come to Alexander the Great, and the West has portrayed that his march into India was very easy and triumphant, but actually he encountered fierce resistance in India. He was wounded, and he died from that wound going back to Greece. And on top of that, he admired a lot Indian spirituality. He used to dialogue with sadhus and ask them questions, and he brought back one of these yogis back to Greece. So, and then you go to Ashoka. Ashoka, which Mr. Nehru chose as an icon of Indian modern India, but actually Ashoka was not Ashoka Chand. He was a very cruel man. He converted to Buddhism for political reasons, because at that time the Jains and the Buddhists were in conflict in the courts of the kings and the emperors. So like this, I take every part of Indian history. Aryan invasion that never existed. To the Indian independence movement, where only Mr. Nehru and Mr. Gandhi have the prime, stars, but actually it was started, in the 1900s by Sri Aurobindo, Tilak, and many others, who believed that violence was necessary to cheer out the British. So they led the foundation of what Mr. Gandhi and Mr. Nehru finished, till today, to Mr. Modi, to Kashmir. So this book is really from the prehistory till today. It's my most complete book, and it's based upon the latest discoveries. Like for the Aryan invasion, there are many, many scientific discoveries that show that Aryan invasion never happened. So yeah, I'm very proud of that book, and I hope that it will do its work, and that it will enlighten as many people as possible.
Thank you very much, Francois. You have the viewers, we have the link down there, and we'll probably put it in our show more section so that you can get the book from there. You can order it. And Francois, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. I want you to leave our viewers with a concluding message of see, the thing that is so, striking is, viewers, Francois was not even, he didn't even know about India. He was an accidental traveler who happened to, come on a caravan, and he found this place so enriching that he decided to stay here. He has put down roots. He's probably more Sanatani than you and I. And yet, it takes for us to understand from somebody else what is our great civilization, how rich this culture is. So I just want you to share some thoughts on what an average viewer needs to do. It is really needed, because unless you take pride in who you are and where you came from, you cannot, tell to others what it is.
See, people come to me and say, "Oh, what you do is wonderful, and thank you." But whatever I learned it here in India. I came ignorant, and whatever, India has brought me immensely at all levels, especially on the spiritual level. There is a wisdom, there is an ancient wisdom, both philosophical and spiritual, as well as practical, pranayama, and meditation and Ayurveda. So whatever I learned, I read it from Sri Aurobindo, from Swami Vivekananda, from traveling and meeting people, from Sri Ravi Shankar. So my debt is towards India. Actually, I have a debt towards India. It's not that I'm doing something for India. I have a debt, and however, it is true that India is a difficult country, and that what I find people lacking today is the spirit of Kshatriya, both in terms of the Hindus of Kashmir who fled without firing a shot, to the BJP government who takes lying down the trash and the rubbish that the BBC or CNN or New York Times are throwing to their face, thinking that it is spiritual not to react. But no, that's not what that's what not the Bhagavad Gita says. That's not what Sri Aurobindo says. He says violence needs to be met with violence. When you're attacked, then you need to violence becomes dharma. Reacting and fighting, and it becomes dharma. But I see that even in the BJP, there's that misconception that violence is no good. Ahimsa. Okay, of course, ahimsa is the supreme truth, but before we come to that height of wisdom, we need to fight. And I don't see it today. Neither in the BJP nor in Mr. Modi. I see that misconception that the Buddhism and the Mahatma Gandhi have amplified so much, that not reacting, getting slapped. The Chinese are taking advantage of that, because they know that Indian will react late or not react at all and get conned by good discourse. And so what India needs today is the spirit of Kshatriya. If I have 5 words I'll say. What India needs today is the spirit of Kshatriya.
Thank you very much, Francois. I don't know if you have any questions today. Let's see. I think we don't have any questions. People have put in a lot of comments. I mean, as a country, we are stung after watching the movie The Kashmir Files. That did it really happen in our country? And yes, not only did it happen, I mean, Francois, that's why I brought Francois to this discussion, because we've had conversations before, and Francois has told me that he was there right through all this. And it's really sad. Francois, I'm saying this because I want to make this happen this time. I'm hoping to be in your neck of the woods in the week of 16th or 23rd of April. I hope to, if you are going to be in Pune, I'll talk to you on phone. And then I'll come down and we will have a tete-a-tete, and I'd like to go through your museum and maybe a couple of conversations that we can capture for our viewers. And thanks once again. And my apologies again online. I'm saying, by the way, viewers, 2 times I called him and then something happened and I forgot to tell him that I changed. Poor guy, he would have been, anybody else would have been justifiably very upset with me. He was patient. He said, no, I understand, Sri. I'll be happy to come on your channel. I have to say this on record because I do make mistakes sometimes. And I apologize again, Francois. One time it was a Christmas day, for God's sake. But anyway, so now I remember all that. But on that day, something happened. So thanks once again for taking the time out and meeting with me. Namaskar.
Thank you. Namaskar.